Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Searchlight Sessions. I am your host, Maggie McClure, and today I am very excited to bring to you Mr. Chris Freihofer, casting director and owner of The Actor Factory. So, on today's Searchlight Sessions, CSA casting director Chris Freihofer is here, who has run the leading casting agency for film, TV, and advertising in Oklahoma for close to 2 decades. He's worked on projects like Rudderless, American Honey, August Osage County, Minari, and upcoming films like Reagan and American Underdog. Very exciting. He's also worked on a lot of different TV shows and commercials like American Airlines, Foot Locker, Wal-Mart, Toyota, Verizon, and the list goes on and on. Welcome, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited to chat with you about all of the things that you have going on. We're so, very pumped to hear your perspective on how a musician can get more involved and how they can be taking advantage of some opportunities that maybe they might not have thought about before. So I wanted to get started by asking you, what inspired you to first get started in the entertainment business?
Oh gosh, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if there was a light bulb moment. It was just kind of something I kind of always wanted to do it. So I don't remember one particular moment.
And what was your path like that's led you to where you are today?
Path is strange. I did a lot of theater and majored in theater in college and got my degree in that, and ran a couple of little theater companies and did a lot of theater around regionally and here locally, and was acting. I was an actor and acted in some movies and some TV shows, and kind of accidentally fell into casting and kind of paying the bills casting while I was acting, and now I'm doing a lot more casting than acting lately because it's been so busy here in Oklahoma.
That is really exciting and so good to hear. It's so awesome to see all the projects that you're working on and all the things that you have worked on.
Thanks.
Um, so you have been a part of a lot of productions that have cast on-camera musicians in featured scenes and also more in a background situation. Let's talk about casting and how that process works for those two different types of scenarios and what that looks like for you.
Well, a little bit of my job is, casting director helps direct the casting process. And I know that sounds silly, but we don't make the casting decisions. We just get the people in to put in front of the director for consideration. And so if we're casting, in this case, musicians that are performing on camera in some way, then we will have some kind of auditions for them, and we'll bring them into the studio here often, and have them perform it. I'm thinking of in cases like the film Rudderless, where we had performers performing at an open mic, throughout the film, and so we worked with director William H. Macy and brought in people, just local musicians, and they came in and just did a song, just did some original music, and we just had a lot of people coming and going, and then they, Mr. Macy made his selections based on, what would artistically good for the film. That has happened a few times over the years. We've had musicians that needed to come in and perform original work or play to something. Often we have musicians that are needed to appear as extras in the film too. Mm-hmm. And so I know, Maggie, you've done some of that, and some other local musicians have done some of that, where we have the band at the party, and you've done that, I know, a number of times, where there's a band up there playing a song, and sometimes you're actually playing the song, and sometimes you're just playing to a performance track, and you just have to play along. So at that point, there's really not an audition involved. We just send out a thing. We're looking for musicians who can play this, or is there a band that can do that? And so we'll go to our database of people, or we'll ask, Searchlight, what do you have? And then we'll just put together that. But again, that's not an audition process. That's just being on the list and being available for the shoot day.
Right. And a lot of the time that kind of comes from the the look that they're looking for, and also what instruments you can play. Those are kind of the two criteria that you're really looking for, right?
Yeah, in the case of Reagan, we had a band that played in the 1980s, and they were kind of a party band. And so we needed, we asked the director, well, what's the band have? He said, well, it's going to be kind of like Chicago. So, have like a rock band and then maybe a small horn section. And then another part of the film, we needed like a 1940s swing orchestra. And so we needed to find people that looked like that. And so, it all just depends on what the film was looking for.
Yeah, that's awesome. And okay, let's talk a little bit about if a musician watching this or a band watching this would like to get opportunities like this to be considered for these types of roles. How does one go about being on this list that you're talking about?
Well, there's two things I would recommend. One of them is you can get on our email list here in my casting office, Freihofer Casting, and you can go. I think the easiest way to do it, the easiest thing to spell, because we've got two websites, is backgroundoklahoma.com, backgroundoklahoma.com, and you go on and you fill out the join our email list at the bottom of the page. There's a little button, join our email list, and then just get on, and you'll see all these things that may not interest you, but there may be some things along the throughout the year that do. The other thing to do is to be registered with Searchlight Music Group. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So if you'd like to with Searchlight Music Group and be a part of our list, we would love to consider you. You just go to searchlightmusicgroup.com, and there's a link that says submit, and you can make an official submission through our website. Send your name and contact information and a link to your music and maybe a photo. We would love to have that information on file, and from that point we will contact you and keep you on our radar as well. So thank you, Chris, for pointing that out. Very exciting.
Well, you and I both know, because we've known each other a long time, you and I both know that when we have a need come up on short notice, you'll get a text from me saying, hey, who do you know that can do this? And so being in Maggie's circle of people is important as well. So we put out a lot of fires for us. And one thing I didn't mention is what kind of compensation is available. And if it's a like a role where you're performing live or something like in Rudderless, depends on the budget of the film. It can be anywhere from a couple $100 a day to $1,000 a day. If it's an extra where you're not actually speaking on camera or you're performing to a different track or something, then it can be anywhere from, like, the low end is like $60 a day, $80, maybe 120. It depends, hopefully based on the budget of the film, we can include a bump if you have to bring an instrument and you have to set up something. So I don't set the rates, but I try to work with producers to say, look, we're asking people to bring in a drum kit or set up a whole band. We need to pay them a little better than what you're paying just the regular extras that were here. So we try to negotiate as much as we can. Sometimes a budget really doesn't, allow us to do much, but you can spend a few hours on a film set and make some money.
Yeah, and in my experience, we have made extra for having to bring instruments, and I would say that most every single production that I've been a part of as a musician, I have had to provide my own instrument. So that is kind of a helpful thing. If you are a musician, having the gear to be able to bring is certainly helpful, as a side note. And also, we should make it clear that the rates that Chris is talking about is for an on-camera appearance as a musician. Now, there's also an opportunity to make additional income from an opportunity like this if the production decides to actually use your recording of the song or your live performance in the movie. So that's another possible opportunity that we here at Searchlight are focused on as well. So very exciting. Thank you, Chris, for explaining about that. Let's see. If someone is cast as a musician on a movie, maybe they haven't been on set before, what are some things they should know about, like set etiquette 101, set basics, because a lot of musicians, maybe this is their first time to ever be a part of a movie and it's all brand new. What kind of advice would you give to those?
Well, I know a lot of musicians, and one thing that I would say, give the advice I would give musicians is in film, punctuality is key. And I know some musicians struggle with punctuality, but when we need you there at 9 a.m. or 7 a.m. or something, you need to be there at 7 a.m., not 7:05. 6:55 is better. 6:50 even better than that. But we don't need you much earlier than 10 minutes. But that's one thing. And the other thing is that it could be any hour of the day. You just, if you're available that day, your availability is from midnight to midnight, because we never know what the call time is going to be until a day or two before, and sometimes not even until the night before. So you could be filming a scene at night, that takes place at night, but it's indoors, and so they could film it at 6 a.m. or 2 p.m. or whatever. So just being flexible on the shoot day is key, and then being on time, that's key. As far as what to expect, we'll notify you the night before of your call time. We'll give you the location. We'll tell you where to park and all that stuff. And you just show up and check in. You'll fill out some paperwork, just like you're applying for a job. So you'll need to have your proof of residency, some kind of utility bill or something like that, bank statement, something like that works. You'll need to have, just like you would just to work anywhere, you'll need a driver's license or some kind of government ID for your I-9 application or your I-9 form. And then you just fill out the payroll form. Then you just kind of sit and wait until they tell you what to do, and don't be too loud about it. What kind of advice would you have?
Yeah, well, yeah, I would say that definitely don't have a gig that night because you don't know when you're going to be leaving. I mean, in my experience, some of these scenes take barely any time, and some of them take forever. You just have no clue, and there's no way to know. And even if the production has a plan, plans change. And so you just, like you said, Chris, you have to be flexible and just allow, yeah, from midnight to midnight during that time to be there. And I would also say, from my last experience being on set a couple months ago for Reagan, just being around other musicians who had not been on set before, just the kinds of things that you're talking about would be very helpful for them to have known going in. And also, it was funny because some of them would be tinkering around on their instruments, and I'd be like, hey guys, remember, we're on set, we can't play. And just things like that you have to be mindful of. Like you just said, sit quietly, which is hard for musicians to do when they're sitting around with their instrument in their hand. So I would say that's one thing, and just be prepared for anything and be flexible and just listen and adapt, because so much can change on the fly and you just have to go with it. That's what I would say from my perspective. What should they be prepared to do? Well, hopefully there's communication ahead of time, but as we have experienced, sometimes there's not a lot of communication on what will we actually be playing on camera. Any advice from your perspective? And then I can also chime in about this.
Maggie, you're really good at, when we put you in something, you're really good at, hey, what are we going to be doing? What exactly do they want? Let's talk about this. Because a lot of times the thought is, we just need a band over there. We just need to see the band. Okay, but is music going to be playing that they're going to need to play too? Do we need to know that? And you're good at asking those questions, because when it comes down to that, we know there's a party and they just need to fill the party. And they don't think sometimes that, oh yeah, in post-production, there's going to be some music playing, so we need to figure out what that's going to look like. And then Maggie, I know you have negotiated sometimes, and we can't name any specifics here, but I know you've negotiated sometimes as like, hey, look, we can provide this track, just give us a little bit of notice and we'll make it sound like whatever. Do you want to talk about that without naming specifics?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, we have done that before. And I mean, just going into a situation like that, I always want to be overly prepared, and to walk into a situation and have no clue what we're supposed to look like we're singing or playing to is hard, because so many musicians, including myself, will watch TV shows and movies, and there's always that scene of the band in the corner, and what you hear does not look like what is going on. And it's just like, oh no, not again.
You
And
know, I don't mean to interrupt you, but some people may not realize that when there's a big party scene, is no sound can be made at all because they're recording dialogue. And so there's a huge party scene with people dancing and stuff, but there's nothing because you got to hear the actors. And so then they'll add all that stuff that they're dancing to later in post-production. So, okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, that's great to point out, because that takes it even one step further, because there's no sound going on, but the band needs to look like they're all playing the same song at the same time. So that means the band needs to know the song in and out, so that they can pretend to look like they're all playing it together. So, yeah, in my experience, it's been so nice to talk with the production team ahead of time and be able to know, okay, this is the song we're doing. And in my experience, having produced the song and sung on it, and know, every the ins and outs of the recording, so that I can do my best to match it, just like I do for our music videos. And so, um, and then so in that case, I might have it in my ear. All the musicians might have it in our ears, so where the people, not in the band, can't hear what's going on, but at least the musicians can, so we can all be together. It's certainly done in a lot of different ways, but like you're saying, dialogue is number one. A lot of the time in these scenes where the band is more of a background. But I mean, regardless of the situation, it's always so much better to know what song is being played and the recording of that song that we're supposed to be looking like we're playing or singing to, especially if there's vocals involved, because I mean, you know, you have to somewhat match what's going on. And if you don't know the lyrics, I mean, good luck. But yeah, it's just so helpful when we as musicians know what the song is going in ahead of time, and if we know the recording, that will be used as well. And I think it's a lot to think about. So during production, a lot of people aren't there yet. They're thinking about the actors and what's going on right in front of them, but they're thinking, oh, we'll talk about music later. But it's a really important part of what's going on, and it just takes a little bit more planning. And I love to be a part of this process, and I love helping productions think about this. And I've seen how much better it can be when just that little extra bit of time is put into making sure that this part is taken care of. So yeah, definitely, something to point out. And hopefully with the more productions that we're working on with Searchlight, we can help make this the new norm, I hope.
that's awesome.
Awesome. Well, we talked about how some of the time, most of the time, musicians will be miming on camera, right? Because the audio is going on. In your experience, how often is it that someone might be asked to actually play live on set?
Well, that's a good question. And I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that because my job is not carried out on set. We work in advance and we work, out of the office or remotely. And so I don't know what's being asked of people on set as often as other people might. So I'm going to ask you, what's your experience?
Good question.
I'm going to turn it back around on you, Maggie.
I would say most of the time it's miming. to an existing track or miming to something that will exist later. I remember when I worked on Christmas in the Heartland, that you worked on, and it was a really great experience, and it was so cool to be able to just jump in and figure this out. So I remember when I got to set, I approached Harvey Lowry, the director, and I said, "Hey, I'm Maggie. I'm the piano player, and can we talk about the music in this scene so the band and I know what to do?" And so he was really glad that I introduced myself, and we talked for a little bit, and he told me, "Okay, I need you guys to play something together but not make any noise." And I was like, "Okay." So none of us had ever met before. None of us had ever played music together before. And so in that moment, I had to just kind of step up, because we were literally about to get situated and start filming. And I just said, "Okay, guys, let's just make up a song." And I said, "Harvey, will you allow us like 5 minutes to make some noise? And then we won't make noise after that, so we can at least get it together on our end so we all look like we're playing the same thing." And he said, "Yeah, of course." So we made up a little song that we could all play together, so that when he said action and it was time, I counted us in and we all played without making any sound that song that we had made up on the fly. And so if you watch back that scene, we're all in time with each other, which is really cool. And thankfully we took that extra time to do that. The song that you actually hear is a song that was done by the composer after the fact. And I experienced for the first time that situation of, oh, I haven't really thought about that yet. And so again, that just goes back to the director thinking, "Oh, we'll do that in post." But thankfully we took that extra time, and that scene turned out really well. But yeah, I would say most of the time it's been miming to a track or miming to nothing that comes in later. I think I've only actually played piano live a couple times. So from my experience, that's been the case. But it seems like using a track is a lot easier for everyone involved, and having a plan ahead of time is definitely helpful for everyone.
Yeah. But that's interesting you point that out, because I know in one of the things we put you in, they needed the band. And so I texted you and I said, "Hey, let's get your band in there, but we need a horn section. Do you know any horn players?" And so we had to put a horn section together to go with your band that does not have a horn section. So at least you guys knew each other and could come up with something in advance. But yeah, I didn't think about that just now. That's interesting.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, let's talk about, let's see, what do you think productions, what would you suggest to productions about improving the realism of filming musicians? Obviously, having a track and a plan ahead of time is really the most important thing, do you think?
I would think so, yeah. Just having some kind of, I always like to say, I'm not the first one to say this, but information is power. So the more you can tell us, the more we can process and get out to the world and get the filmmakers, what they're looking for to make it as authentic as possible. I mean, come on, haven't we all seen movies or TV shows like at parties with people dancing, and they just look like they're not really dancing to what's going on at all, and they're just like offbeat, and it just looks kind of silly and stupid. And it's because the plan wasn't in place, where let's have a song that goes to this beat and then play this beat for a minute to get everybody going, and then we roll cameras and everybody's going, now cut that, and everybody just keep dancing to that beat in your head. And that's essentially, I think, what you're talking about needs to happen for musicians. Same thing for people dancing at a party as well, or whatever it's going to be. Just a little bit, more information for us helps us do our job, so you have a better film.
Definitely. Yeah. And I'd also like to add, it's great to have people, even if they're just pretending, it's great to have people that really play the instrument and play it well. Professional musicians, professional singers versus someone, an actor who can pretend to play an instrument.
I played trombone in high school band. Well, we need someone that knows how to play the trombone.
Yeah, exactly. So I think
I'm not begrudging high school band, but some people may have done it. Like I played the trombone in high school band, but that was decades ago. So I'm not going to remember, what to do.
you don't want to play trombone in the next film?
My arm was never long enough. And honestly, I've never told anybody this. I was in band for 3 years. I still don't know how to actually read music. I don't know. It doesn't, like, key changes. I don't.
How did you get away with being in band for 3 years?
I was first chair. I could fake it. And I went to a small high school.
That's amazing. Oh, well, one of these days we might have to put you on trombone.
No, not gonna happen anymore.
Oh my goodness.
I lost my lip. That's what I'll say.
Well, let's see. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about that we haven't touched on yet, in regards to on-camera musicians in films and TV and ads and just on camera in general?
Well, let me ask you this, Maggie. Let's say I'm a producer, and let's say you're on set as a musician, and I walk up to you and say, can we have you play songs like something you've written for this? How would you as a musician handle that in this on-set situation where maybe you feel a little pressure that you need to do something, but then what's the ramifications of it down the line?
Yeah, that is a very interesting spot to be in, because you are on the spot if the producer is literally coming to you on set and saying, can we use one of your songs, which has happened to me before on set. And so you have to think quick, because of course you want to have that opportunity, but you also have to make sure that you're going to get taken care of. And so you just need to be clear right then that there's a budget for licensing that song.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, but not just taken care of, but not taken advantage of.
Exactly.
There's a difference.
Yes, exactly. Oh, you're fine. But yeah, and it's a hard place to be, because yes, you want that opportunity, but you have to make it clear. Yes, I would definitely be up for that. What do you know, like, about what your budget is for music? Do you have a budget? I mean, maybe that's a good place to start. Do you have a budget for licensing original music? And start there. And if they're acting like, I don't expect someone to sign a contract in 5 minutes while we're on set, but as long as there's a understanding that I recorded this song and I am saying that I'm going to need to get paid for the use of this song in the film, which I think you can pick up on if they say, oh, well, I was just gonna, have my friend do it for free, but I'm giving you the opportunity. Then you go, oh, you kind of understand what they're saying. I'm not gonna pay you anything.
Kind of that exposure thing, and exposure doesn't pay the rent. Right?
No, it doesn't. And I mean, when you're starting out, exposure is great, but you have to put a value on your work, and especially songs that you're investing money into making and creating. Songs are not free to produce, and all the time and energy that went into the writing and the production and the release of that song, it has value, and you have to stand on that and know that it's worth something, and that the productions have usually and should have money for the use of music in their films. That is a really good question, because that has happened to me, and that is unfortunately a situation where a lot of musicians could be taken advantage of. So it's good to point that out.
And I want to mention that, not every movie has all the money they need. I mean, I've worked on every budget of film, and even the biggest budget, they're trying to save as much money as they can and do things as cheaply as they can. But there are some movies that are just trying to get their movie made, and they don't have any money for anything. And then you got to figure out, well, is this really an opportunity for me, or is it something that isn't going to do me any good, but it's helping them out? You know,
Yeah.
like Maggie says, there has to be a value. And I'm going to paraphrase, but it might have only taken you half an hour to write that song and 10 minutes to play it, but it took you 20 years of music lessons and, you know, getting the expertise to write that song. And so that's what people need to compensate for. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, for sure. And like you're saying, I mean, it's a lifetime of experiences that had to happen for this song to be created. And there's no substitute for that. And that is worth so much. And, you know, unfortunately, sometimes, like you're talking about, productions get to post-production and they're like, oh, well, we only budgeted this much for music and we only have like this tiny amount. And that's when you have to decide, okay, well, is this worth me being a part of? And that's where it comes down to, okay, what kind of film is this? Is this something that I really believe in? Is this something that really aligns with my music and my brand, my image, my message? And consider all of those things. But I hope, Chris, that with Searchlight, we can help re-educate people in the film industry to set aside an appropriate budget for the music that they want, and so that they can afford the songs that they would love to have. I think that that's really important to think about in the beginning, and I hope that we can change the way that that is thought about.
For sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris, for being a part of our video today for the Searchlight Sessions. This video series is designed to help up-and-comers in the entertainment industry to expand ways that they can be successful. Stay tuned for some takeaway ideas from this session to help with your success. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Bye.